All right, let's talk about the Chupacabras. For almost 30 years now, this name has been synonymous with a mysterious, blood-sucking beast that's terrified communities all across the Americas. But what was it really? Was it an alien, a genetic experiment gone wrong, or something else entirely? Well, we're going to dig into all of it, using a meticulous 5-year investigation by author Benjamin Radford as our guide. We're going to piece together the complete story, from its wild origins to the simple scientific truths that finally crack the case. So, here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at where this thing even came from, its explosive birth in Puerto Rico. Then, we'll get into how the monster's story started to change, becoming two totally different creatures. After that, we dive into the hard science, the evidence that really unraveled the whole thing. And we'll wrap up by tackling the biggest question of all: why did so many people believe in it so strongly? Okay, so let's go back. The year is 1995. We're on the island of Puerto Rico. And you have to understand, the atmosphere is tense. There's a lot of anxiety in the air. This was the perfect, fertile ground for a series of strange events to come together and give birth to a legend that would eventually go global. And then this happened. This quote you're seeing, this is the moment everything changed. An eyewitness, a woman named Madeline Tolentino, gives this incredibly specific, chilling description. And just like that, a vague, shapeless sphere suddenly has a face. It has claws, it has spines, it walks on two legs. It's real. And the panic? It absolutely exploded. You know, this all happened incredibly fast. It starts in March with farmers finding their animals dead, mysterious puncture wounds, total panic. Then a local comedian and musician named Silverio Perez gives it a name, Chupacabras, goatsucker. That name? It just sticks. It makes the threat feel so much more real. But the final critical piece that lit the fuse was Madeline Tolentino's eyewitness account in September. Now the monster didn't just have a name, it had a terrifying face. Okay, so the story goes viral, right? It jumps from Puerto Rico to Mexico, then up into the United States. And as it travels, as more and more people hear about it, something really, really weird starts to happen. The monster itself, well, it gets a makeover, a complete one. So remember that first version, the original monster from Puerto Rico, the one that came from Madeline Tolentino's description? That thing was completely alien. It walked on two legs, it had those creepy spines running down its back, huge dark eyes. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi horror movie. But then the story crosses into the mainland US, especially hitting Texas hard, and suddenly, poof, the alien is gone. The creature people are describing now is totally different. It's on four legs. It looks kind of like a coyote or a dog, but wrong. Hairless, with this weird leathery skin, just a bizarre, sickly-looking animal. Let's just put these two side by side for a second, because this is wild. In one corner, you've got the original, a two-legged, spiny, alien creature known only from what people said they saw. In the other corner, you have the new version, a four-legged, hairless, dog-like thing that people are actually finding carcasses of. We are talking about two completely different monsters being called by the exact same name. How does that even happen? Right? That's the big question. How can one legendary creature have two totally different physical forms? This contradiction is the absolute key to solving the whole mystery. It's a huge red flag for investigators. It tells them, okay, the stories aren't matching up. We need to stop focusing on what people say they saw and start looking for something solid, some kind of hard, physical evidence. And this is where the mystery really starts to unravel. Because that US version of the Chupacabras, the weird canine thing, it left something behind that the Puerto Rican version never ever did: bodies. And once you have bodies, well, the game changes. You can finally bring in the scientists. So people started finding these strange carcasses all over the place. And time again, scientists would get their hands on them and run DNA tests. The results? They were always conclusive. They were coyotes, they were dogs, they were raccoons, sometimes foxes, every single time. In one famously bizarre case, a so-called Chupacabra's body turned out to be a dried-out fish, a guitar fish, that someone had carved up to look like a little monster. I'm not kidding. So you're probably thinking, okay, but if they were just coyotes, why did they look so weird? And that's a fair question. The answer is a truly horrific skin disease called sarcoptic mange. It's caused by tiny mites that burrow into an animal's skin. In a severe case, a coyote will lose all of its fur. its skin will get thick, gray, and leathery. It'll get super skinny and weak from the constant scratching and infection. It literally transforms a familiar animal into something that looks like a creature out of a nightmare.
All right, so that explains why the creatures looked so monstrous. But what about the reports of, dozens of goats or chickens being killed in one night? That's not supernatural either. It's a known animal behavior called overkilling. Think about it. A coyote gets into a chicken coop. The chickens are trapped, they're panicked, they're fluttering everywhere. The coyote's predator brain just goes into overdrive. Its attack instinct gets overstimulated, and it just keeps killing long after it's.
And now for the most famous detail of all, the idea that the victims were drained of their blood. This one comes down to a simple misunderstanding of biology. Look, when any animal dies, its heart stops pumping. Without blood pressure, gravity takes over. All the blood in the body sinks to the lowest points, where it pools and thickens. This is called livor mortis. So if you find the body hours later, the wound will seem dry, creating the powerful illusion that the animal was drained. In fact, a veterinarian in Puerto Rico named David Morales performed over 300 autopsies on alleged Chupacabras victims. His conclusion? Not one, not a single animal had actually been drained of blood.
And even the most famous cases, the ones that were all over TV, couldn't stand up to the science. Take the Cuero Chupacabra, a carcass found in Texas in 2007. It was a media sensation. It underwent multiple independent DNA tests, and the result was always the same. It was just a coyote. A very, very sick coyote.
So, okay, if the physical evidence in the US all points to sick animals and natural phenomena, and there was never any physical evidence for the alien version in Puerto Rico, then why? Why did this myth become so incredibly powerful? To find that answer, we have to stop looking at zoology and start looking at sociology and psychology. We have to look at ourselves. And this is mind-blowing. Let's go all the way back to that original alien creature. Look at this timeline. On July 7th, 1995, the sci-fi horror film Species opens in theaters in Puerto Rico. The monster in that movie is a bipedal, bloodthirsty alien with spines on its back. Less than 2 months later, Madeline Tolentino gives her famous eyewitness description. The resemblance between the two is just uncanny. It's almost a perfect match. And guess what? It wasn't a coincidence. The eyewitness herself, Madeline Tolentino, later admitted in an interview that she had seen the movie Species before her sighting. She even made the connection herself. Her brain saw this terrifying monster on screen, and then, when faced with a very real, very scary but unexplained situation in her community, it filled in the blanks with the image from the movie. She accidentally blended cinematic fiction with real-world fear. But a movie is only a spark. For a legend this big to catch fire, it needs fuel. And the fuel was the deep-seated anxieties in Puerto Rico at the time. There was widespread distrust of the U.S. government, persistent beliefs about secret genetic experiments, and a real history of the U.S. military using the island for things like testing Agent Orange. People felt powerless. The Chupacabras became a powerful symbol for all those fears. It was a tangible monster you could be scared of, instead of these huge, faceless political forces. The monster wasn't just a monster, it was a metaphor. And this is why it's no accident that the Chupacabras legend thrives almost exclusively in Latin American cultures. It serves as a kind of cultural boogeyman, a vessel for specific historical grievances and social anxieties that really resonate within those communities. You don't just see a mangy coyote and think Chupacabras out of nowhere. You have to already know the story. And that's why the myth took root so strongly in Texas, with its large Hispanic population and close cultural ties. So when you put all the pieces together, you realize the Chupacabras wasn't just a simple case of mistaken identity. It was a perfect storm. It's like a recipe for a modern monster. You start with a spark from pop culture. You add a body made from misunderstood science. You pour on the fuel of genuine social fear and distrust. And then you have the media fanning the flames, spreading the story everywhere. That is how you make a monster in the modern age. In the end, after that massive 5-year investigation, Benjamin Radford's conclusion was definitive. There is not one single shred of credible physical evidence to support the existence of the Chupacabras. The animal may not be real, but the phenomenon absolutely is, and it tells us something profound about ourselves, that in a world that often feels chaotic and frightening, we sometimes build monsters to give our fears a face. Which leaves us to wonder, what anxieties of our world today are shaping the monster of tomorrow?